from Kansas State University, this is Agriculture Today. Eric Atkinson with you, and here's what's coming up. Offering this week's insight on the cattle markets, Oklahoma State University's Derrell. He'll talk about the stability that may now be setting up in the fed and feeder cattle markets, and he'll comment on what's shaping up in wheat pasture stocker calf demand. Then K-State's DeAnn Presley will tell of a new resource available to you producers who are interested in planting a cool season cover crop this fall, an evaluation of over 50 cover crop varieties for their performance in Central Plains growing conditions. And Jeff Wickman is standing by with this week's 4-H segment. He'll talk with K-State's Anissa Jepsen about the new 4-H Agriculture and Animal Science Facebook page. All that here on Agriculture Today.
A social distancing tip.
Putting distance between yourself and others is critical to slowing the spread of coronavirus. So here are ways to stay in contact without the physical contact part. Call, send a text, set up a video conference, post on social media, dedicate a song on the radio. If you have symptoms of fever, dry cough, and shortness of breath, call your healthcare provider before going to their office. For more info, visit coronavirus.gov.
Let's all do our part, because we're all #alone together. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Thanks for listening in once again to this Agriculture Today on the K-State Radio Network. For our cattle market segment, we turn to livestock economist Derrell out of Oklahoma State University. He's with us regularly to get into the latest price action in the cattle trades. And as we recap last week's trade, Derrell, it is a good recovery in the cash-fed cattle market, and the feeder market seems to have had a good week of it as well. Your thoughts?
I think so. The fed cattle market, it probably has moved past the low. We're, I think, beginning to see some of the seasonal tendencies sort of reassert themselves. Obviously, in the first half of the year, with all of the challenges we had, seasonal patterns didn't mean much. But all else being equal, the fed cattle prices tend to bottom in September and move up a little bit into October and November. And the fundamentals underneath that, I think, would support that in general. The feeder cattle markets seem to be holding up well, pretty good demand for feeder cattle, and we're probably beginning to see a little bit of demand for stocker cattle as well, although it's pretty early on that prospect. But all in all, I think we're doing pretty well.
We want to take up that stocker cattle demand in particular and talk wheat pasturing prospects in just a second. The fundamentals as we look at them now, domestic beef demand must be doing relatively well. There was some concern about that following the Labor Day holiday, if that demand would hold up. But what are the numbers telling us?
Well, I think so. Again, in fact, in the broader context of the pandemic and the fact that we still have a food service sector that's significantly restricted at this point, I think domestic demand has held up pretty well. We do transition after Labor Day into what I call fall and winter markets, so we see a kind of a different mix of products featured, and the weakness we've had in the box beef price here recently is not surprising. It looks like it's stabilized, and probably again we'll move forward here with a little bit of seasonal strength,
which would be more than welcome, obviously. What's the latest story on U.S. beef export developments?
The weekly data suggests that we've had a pretty good recovery in beef exports. We had severe disruptions in May and June. July exports, the monthly data, which is a little more complete, was back up. The weekly data since then would suggest we've continued to see pretty good recovery in most of our major markets. So, again, kind of with our fingers crossed when we think about the broader economic problems on a global scale, it does look like most of our major markets have recovered and are continuing to move quite a bit of beef through those markets.
And you say there are some interesting signals on the beef import side. What's going on there?
Well, the July data showed a sharp spike in beef imports. I think that probably was triggered by the disruptions in the flow of products in April and May, and it just takes a while. We saw a bit of a lag in the disruptions in exports, and we see a bit of a lag in the spike in imports. Probably won't last that long. I think it'll come back down as we go forward. But it's also related to the fact that we've had very strong ground beef demand at both the grocery stores and, the quick service restaurants are the one sector of the restaurant industry that has done relatively well and has recovered pretty well. And we've had lots of heavy fed cattle, which produce a lot of, fatty trimmings, the 50% or 60% trimmings, and that needs a lot of lean to turn that into ground beef. And so I think that's probably where some of this demand for imports is coming from.
So once again, the fundamentals seem to be shaping up pretty well for these markets as an underpinning, if nothing else. Want to mention something specifically that might impact the feeder cattle market. We've seen corn prices improve of late, and in large part on the strength of China coming in and buying heavily in the U.S. feed grain market. Is this something that could pressure feeder cattle prices in that market this fall going forward?
Well, I think we have to keep an eye on it. At this point, I don't think, I would see a lot of impact on feeder cattle markets, but if it were to continue and we start talking about bringing that, projected carryover for this corn marketing year down, below 2.5 billion bushels or down towards 2 billion, then we could begin to see that corn market start to really ration supplies, and that would certainly have an impact then on feedlot cost of gain and would be reflected in feeder cattle prices.
That's still to materialize. We'll see what happens from here forward. You hinted at this earlier, and that is wheat pasturing and the potential for calves moving into those grazing scenarios. Now, the weather outlook has been somewhat discouraging about wheat growth in parts of the Central Plains this fall. We already see some grazing out there, but what's your general take on wheat grazing prospects, and how would that factor into the feeder cattle market?
You bet. I think the conditions for wheat pasture forage vary quite a bit depending on where you are. In some places, we had producers that were planting by the end of August. I talked to a producer the other day, said he had wheat up and it was growing rapidly, and he wasn't even too concerned about armyworms being able to catch up with it at this point. We have other producers that had actually, and this is in southern Oklahoma primarily, lots of moisture and were ready to plant but hadn't been able to get in the fields yet. In other areas, I think it's probably not been that generous with the moisture, so we're kind of waiting and seeing. And then this overriding picture of La Nina potentially developing could take the gas out of this thing, even for those producers that get off to a good start. So I think we certainly have to keep an eye on it. Right now, I would say there is some anticipation and expectation of some wheat pasture grazing, and that's going to translate into some demand for feeder cattle here over the next month or 6 weeks, if, in fact, conditions continue to move forward favorably.
Sounds though it may be a fluid situation if conditions start to deteriorate sharply. So producers need to be on the ready as far as what might happen here.
I think that's right. You need to always be pretty nimble and flexible if you can. And, we got to watch not only the physical conditions for the forage, but also these market conditions. Right now, the price relationships in feeder cattle markets are fairly attractive from a value of gain standpoint, and looking ahead to what the futures is offering for next spring for these winter wheat grazing, possibilities. And so you just got to keep an eye on all of those things. Conditions can change pretty dramatically here at this time of the year.
And in as far as forage availability, something else that you actually put together an article about recently on drought and forage conditions. A lot of this does apply to the western U.S., but creeps into the Central Plains as well. The hay market, what should producers be expecting as we get into the fall and winter? Are higher prices for hay ahead?
Well, I think certainly in some cases we're already seeing some higher hay prices. The USDA data, which is a little more general, even on a state level, doesn't really show it yet. But if you look at USDA's projections for 2020 hay production, alfalfa production nationally is down nearly 6%, and much of that reduction tends to be in the western states of the U.S., really the Rocky Mountains and west. Other hay production is actually only down slightly. But, in certain locations, we know that producers have been feeding hay for some time, and hay supplies are already pretty tight. So certainly on a local and regional basis, we're going to see some impacts there. And, then nationally, it just depends on where you are. There's a fairly sharp demarcation between the western drought areas and other regions where pasture conditions and hay conditions have been much more favorable.
Really, producers, as always, should be putting a pencil to what the market looks like and be figuring these things in accordingly. But being nimble might be a part of this as well, Derrell.
Well, it is. And, from the standpoint of hay and particularly a beef cow herd, whatever you've got now is what you've got until next spring or next summer, really. And so, you kind of know where you're at, and you need to sit down, take stock of those inventories, both your pasture that you might be carrying, if any, at this point, as well as hay supplies, and then figure out what's realistic for you to do. At this point, there's very little expectation we're going to produce a lot more forage, so you've got to figure out how you're going to be able to utilize what you have and make adjustments accordingly.
Very well. And as far as what might happen in the markets in this trading week ahead of us, what do you think?
Well, I think we've got a little bit of, sort of stability in these markets. Again, the fundamentals look a little better. Box beef seems to be stabilizing. The fed cattle market has picked back up a little bit. And again, that's probably driven seasonally, so I think there's a potential for that to continue. Feeder cattle markets, in general, we would expect for them to go a little bit lower from September into October, but we may not see that. It just depends on the timing of things like stocker cattle demand for these lightweight calves and the continued feedlot situation in terms of demand for placements for cattle. Feedlots have been pretty full, but if we move cattle out, there'll be more demand, and the feed grain situation doesn't turn too adverse, then we'll continue to see pretty good demand for these feeder cattle.
Well, we always welcome a counter-seasonal move to the good in these markets. We'll watch for that. Derrell, many thanks for your thoughts as always, and we will catch up with you again soon.
You bet. Look forward to it.
Out of Oklahoma State University, that's livestock economist Derrell Peel, offering up his latest observations on the cattle market trends here on Agriculture Today. By the way, Derrell posts a ton of good informational material routinely on his department's website, so we'd certainly encourage you to take advantage of that. It's at agecon.okstate.edu/livestock. Again, agecon.okstate.edu/livestock. And we'll be back after you hear this. This is the K-State Radio Network.
What is radon? Home exposure to radon gas is the leading cause of lung cancer death in the United States for non-smokers. In Kansas, 1 in 4 homes will test at or above the EPA action level. The Surgeon General recommends all homes be tested and fixed if necessary. Visit kansasradonprogram.org for more information. Test, fix, save a life. This message brought to you by the Kansas Radon Program, the Kansas Association of Broadcasters, and this station.
We're back now on this Agriculture Today and addressing once more this ever-expanding interest in cover crop production here in Kansas. We've welcomed by, once more, a soil management specialist with K-State Research and Extension, DeAnn Presley. And DeAnn's going to pass along word on an excellent and highly valuable new informational resource for those of you interested in cover crop establishment. It is a technical guide on cover crop selection. DeAnn, producers have been really clamoring for some sort of guidance on what cover crops work where, and this suits that need, right?
That's right. This is an excellent piece of research that's been done by others, not by me, but I wanted to give credit to who did the work. It's USDA NRCS, so Natural Resources Conservation Service, and then they have plant materials centers located across the U.S., and we have one here in Kansas, down by Ashland Bottoms, not too far from Manhattan. And so scientists there have done this work to evaluate, I think it's 56 different cool season cover crop varieties. So I often think, there's a lot of effort that farmers put into selecting their cash crop hybrids and varieties. And then as far as cover crops go, we just don't have that same level of information. And these scientists at the Plant Materials Center have put that work in to do real evaluations of multiple different kinds of cereal rye, for example, to give them ratings for various properties.
It really is fresh information, which we'll dwell upon here. But let's talk about that Plant Materials Center itself. The NRCS has had that in operation, as you say, just across the Kansas River from Manhattan, and it is devoted to identifying and evaluating plant material of all sorts for the Central Plains region, right?
That's right. So I know historically their purpose has been focused a little bit more on perennials. So developing and keeping seed stock available for things like different varieties of switchgrass is just one example. So I know that they've been dedicated for many years to perennials. And then I think maybe over the past 5 years or so, they've been taking a look at cover crops and helping out with the soil health work that's going on throughout the NRCS mission.
It's an exceptional outlet for information, has been for years upon years. So again, this center, along with others in the central region, have looked at these cool season annual cover crop varieties, and they have assessed them on the basis of several key factors, DeAnn.
That's right. So I have seen that in their ratings that they've done things about how quickly fall cover is established. There's information about fall stand quality. Also, winter survival, which is an important thing. If you're planting a cool season cover crop, then you do probably want it to survive the winter. That's probably the goal. And so they've rated that for each of these properties. There's also things about the maturity date and disease ranking and insect ranking. So again, they've got these criteria ranked anywhere from excellent down to poor or marginal or even none for each one of these varieties.
So you take this information, you look through it, see what might work in this state, and there are several examples in there that most assuredly will. But you listed those criteria, DeAnn. Mm-hmm. Fall cover, stand quality, winter survival, maturity date, disease, and insect resistance rankings. Which of those do you think would be of greatest importance, or are they equally so?
Well, I think it's all important information to have, but I do think that winter survival is a pretty important one. So the big question is, how quickly can you get it seeded? And then how well does that establish? And so, that quick fall cover, that's probably also an important one too. The disease ranking and the insect ranking is something that I don't know very many people that have any data on that at all. And so that's a really important piece of information that they are gathering too. So I think all of the work that they're doing is just excellent.
Yeah. So how this publication is laid out, just to explain, and this is illustrated fully in the Agronomy E-Update newsletter article that highlights this. It has these cover crops, all 56, listed one by one. They have a full description, and then they have that table covering those variables that you mentioned, and then the ratings for each of those variables by variety under that cover crop heading.
That's right. So winter pea is, for example, it's got a description, and winter pea it's a legume, which that's a question that we've had for a while when people talk about, well, what's a good winter legume? And well, crimson clover, winter pea, and vetch. Those are your best choices. And then each one of those sort of has its pros and cons. So winter pea is something that I know has been something that I personally have wanted to see work done on for years, is can we get a new winter pea developed? And I should say that that's not part of this exact project. I don't know that they're developing new things, but I know they're evaluating existing lines. So they might be doing that work of development. I don't know, but this pub is focused on evaluating existing lines. And so winter survival of winter pea has always been one of the biggest knocks, How well does it survive our winters? We don't have the worst winters, but, we also have winters that fluctuate a lot from warm to cold to warm again, and that can be pretty hard on plants. And so that's what they've done. And so just quickly looking, maybe about 10 different kinds of winter pea varieties listed here. And some of them are listed as poor and some of them are listed as good. And so that's just excellent information for us to have.
And as you know, as all know, our growing conditions are varied so dramatically across the state of Kansas. So we really can't speak of one or two cover crops suitable for the entire state. That's where this comes in extremely useful in sorting that out for producers.
Yes, I think so. And then working also with local seed sources, seed dealers or co-ops or other ag retailers to even fine-tune that within the state, like you say, for which ones locally have been doing very well. Because, as you said, we have pretty big variety as you go from west to east. So I think that even fine-tuning that information further can be pretty important.
But this is the first true opportunity that producers have to reference something that capsulizes all of this information in a way that they can make good decisions on selecting cover crops suitable for growing conditions here in Kansas. And how does a producer access this, DeAnn?
So this is a technical note that's published by USDA. So the link is provided in our e-update, but also they can go to nrcs.usda.gov, and then I would say look for information from the plant materials centers themselves, and you'll find this technical note there.
And by the way, you have created a link on the Agronomy e-update newsletter that allows one to click and go in that respect, right?
That's right. They can get to this direct publication from there, but then if you go to the Plant Materials Center site, you can see what other types of things they are working on.
Check out the article that's in the e-update series, dated a week from this past Friday, September the 11th. And you can find out more about how to access that, but nrcs.usda.gov is the place to start. And just before you go, DeAnn, other thoughts on establishing cover crops this fall? Here are some good guidelines for variety selection. What else do producers need to be pondering right now, do you think, and honing in on?
Well, hopefully they already have their seed, because the time to plant is upon us. As soon as the combine has gone through, and in fact, we've been doing some work with overseeding cover crops into standing crops just to try to get in there at the right time. So I'll give you an example. I think about 2 weeks ago or so, we went and overseeded some cover crops into standing corn by Burlington. And honestly, that corn was about ready to harvest. But the thing was, there was rain coming. So we wanted to get these cover crops seeded on and then capture this rain if it came and get those up and growing, and then the combine could come across. So just it's time to establish. It's time to go. It's time to plant. So chase the combines if you're going to drill them, or, aerial apply with an airplane, or overseed with a seeder, a sprayer type seeder. There's lots of options, but the time is now. There's time. There's still time, but the time is now for maximum growth.
You need to be lining out your supplies for sure. And meantime, you and your colleagues continue to explore the seemingly endless alternatives for cover crop utilization in Kansas. So this will be on your burner for a while.
Oh, yeah. I've been working on cover crops now for over 13 years, and the questions still come and they change. Well, what about cover crops in this way or in that way, or what if we did this? And in fact, just had a question from somebody about growing perennial cover crops under corn and soybeans. And so, the questions never stop, and we just keep exploring new ways and new things to research.
Well, keep up the good work in that respect. Thanks for coming over, telling us about this new publication available to producers, DeAnn.
Thank you.
DeAnn Presley is a soil management specialist, K-State Research and Extension. Again, the USDA's Natural Resources Conservation Service at its plant materials centers, including the one just outside of Manhattan, have just completed their 2-year evaluation of 56 commercially available varieties of the following: black oats, black seeded oats, cereal rye, crimson clover, daikon radish, hairy vetch, red clover, and winter field pea, and have evaluated those for their suitability in an assortment of growing conditions. And this will be great information as you settle on a cover crop variety for your situation. The link to that can be found in the Agronomy e-update newsletter at agronomy.ksu.edu, dated September the 11th. Have a look at it, producers, and you're tuned to Agriculture Today. Now, this break, we'll return with more for you here on the K-State Radio Network. Please stay with us.
Did you know every Kansas farmer feeds 128 plus people?
Kansas farmers are hard workers, dependable, authentic, and sensitive.
Not only do farmers put food on your table, but they put clothes on your back and fuel in your car.
For more information about Kansas farmers, visit K-State Research and Extension online or stop by your local Extension office. This message has been brought to you by the K-State Animal Sciences Leadership Academy participants.
Coming to you from the campus of Kansas State University, this is Agriculture Today, our Monday edition. Eric Atkinson with you as we move on now to today's agricultural news headlines, these courtesy in part of DTN. Well, the USDA on Friday released the details about sign-up for the new round of coronavirus aid to you producers for as much as $14 billion. The USDA's Rod Bain files this report.
Starting next week, my administration is committing additional relief to help farmers.
President Donald Trump Thursday in Wisconsin making the announcement of an additional $14 billion for ag producers facing market disruptions and associated costs related to COVID-19. Much of that in direct payments. Also, more commodities are eligible under CFAP 2. Something Agriculture Secretary Sonny Perdue told the National Farmers Union recently USDA has been working on based on producer input.
This is an example of government working for the people. We asked for your input, and we listened, and we updated the program based on the comments that we received.
Sign-up will run through December 11th. More details on CFAP 2 and sign-up are available online at www.farmers.gov/CFAP. I'm Rod Bain reporting for the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Washington, D.C.
As for more of those specifics, CFAP 2 will have 3 different categories of payments to producers based on price triggers, flat rate crops, and overall commodity sales. Under the price trigger category are mainly the major commodity crops that meet a 5% price decline over a specific period of time. This would include the broad range of commodities such as corn, sorghum, soybeans, sunflowers, upland cotton, and all classes of wheat. Now, the all classes of wheat comes after wheat state senators and groups representing wheat growers earlier this month had lobbied the USDA that the first CFAP had largely excluded roughly 70% of wheat production from the aid. Payments will be made based on 2020 planted acres for the crop, excluding, prevented planting and experimental acres. Payments will be capped at $250,000 per person or entity for all commodities combined. Corporations, limited liability companies, and limited partnerships may qualify for higher payments based on the USDA's actively engaged rules. And producers must also certify that they meet the $900,000 limit on adjusted gross income, or at least 75% of their income would be from agriculture, farming, ranching, or forestry. On tomorrow's broadcast, during our regular FSA Coffee Talk segment, the state director of the Farm Service Agency here in Kansas, David Shim, will join us to outline CFAP 2 in further detail. Now, the National Pork Producers Council is focusing on this coming second round of CFAP aid and are urging Congress to provide the USDA authority to use the CCC to provide financial help to livestock producers who've had to euthanize livestock due to COVID-19. The group wants no limits on the CFAP 2 effort, but the USDA, again, will impose pay caps on the funds. The group also wants more funding to boost the number of U.S. inspectors at U.S. borders, citing the appearance of African swine fever in Germany now. That is a key reason more inspectors are needed, they say, as they call them the first line of defense. And the group is working to try to get the inspector funding in the coming continuing resolution to keep the government funded past September the 30th, but officials were uncertain whether such funding could be added to the plan. In other headlines today, EPA Administrator Andrew Wheeler announced on Friday interim mitigation measures for atrazine herbicide. Atrazine, of course, widely used in agriculture across a broad range of crops, especially corn and sorghum. The new measures are designed to address potential human health and ecological risks. The agency is finalizing label requirements for atrazine to include mandatory spray drift control measures to minimize pesticide drift into non-target areas such as water bodies, as well as updating label directions to reduce weed resistance to atrazine. As part of its routine re-registration review of atrazine, the EPA has been releasing draft ecological and human health risk assessments for public comment. Now, the new label language will prohibit spraying during a temperature inversion, will set a 15-mile-per-hour wind speed restriction for aerial and ground applications, and specific boom and nozzle requirements. The EPA also proposed ending one of 2 ongoing atrazine water monitoring programs started back in 2004. Now, environmental groups have lobbied for atrazine to be banned entirely based on their concerns about human health risks and environmental problems, particularly concerning water quality. Wheeler noted in this announcement that the benefits of atrazine in agriculture are high, so these new protections, he says, gives our nation's farmers more clarity and certainty concerning proper use, in his words. The EPA will next complete draft biological evaluations for atrazine. Those evaluations are expected to be available for public comment later this fall. Making sure the safety and health of every agricultural producer counts is the focus of this year's National Farm Safety and Health Week, which is occurring as we speak. Here's more once again from the USDA's Rod Bain.
Every farmer counts. That is why their safety and health on the farm should be emphasized all year long, and especially during National Farm Safety and Health Week, which starts Monday. The National Education Center for Agricultural Safety has multiple webinars scheduled throughout the week, addressing the gamut of farm safety and health issues such as safety around machinery, mental health, and keeping kids safe on the farm. In addition, a series of public service videos addresses farm safety and health concerns and practices that can be utilized by producers, their families, and employees.
Things that any operator of a tractor needs to recognize before they get out on the road or in the field is to do a pre-maintenance check on the vehicle.
The number of PTO entanglements has gone down over the years, which is a good thing.
More details on National Farm Safety and Health Week can be found online at www.necasag.org. I'm Rod Bain reporting for the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Washington, D.C.
And one final item, the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration has now extended its hours of service waiver through the end of 2020 for livestock haulers in response to the nationwide coronavirus pandemic. That exemption was due to expire September the 14th, but it has now been extended through December the 31st. Livestock feed haulers are also included in that extension, but only those transporting finished feed. Those hauling feed ingredients are ineligible for the waiver. Drivers wishing to haul under the exemption should print and keep in their cab a copy of the expanded emergency declaration. That can be found at the Kansas Livestock Association website, KLA.org. Again, www.kla.org. You're listening to Agriculture Today.
Did you eat today? Thank a farmer. A way to get more involved in agriculture is through 4-H and FFA. Through 4-H and FFA, we have been given multiple opportunities to grow as leaders and learn more about agriculture.
You can learn skills related to jobs, public speaking skills, and you get the opportunity to travel around the country and meet new people.
If you want more information about getting more involved in 4-H and FFA, visit them on their websites at kansasffa.org and kansas4h.org.
Welcome back, and thanks for joining us on Agriculture Today. Along with Eric Atkinson, I'm Jeff Wickman. Kansas 4-H youth involved in the agriculture and animal science project area now have another way to stay connected and up to date on activities and events taking place across the state. Kansas 4-H Extension Specialist Anissa Jepsen says that Kansas 4-H has launched a new Facebook page that allows them to post photos, competition results, videos, and other learning tools. Anissa, I think we've all become very familiar with going online and searching for things and using Facebook to connect with one another. And Kansas 4-H is doing the same thing. You have developed a new Facebook page for Ag and Animal Sciences.
Yes, we're really excited about our new Kansas 4-H Agriculture and Animal Sciences page. We encourage everyone to search for it, like it, make it one of your favorites. That way you can be up to date on all of the exciting events and things that we have going on in Kansas 4-H.
And that's really the benefit, isn't it, is being able to not only post videos to it, but to post updated information, because as we know, information in this day and age seems to be changing almost daily from what we thought something was going to be or something we thought was going to happen that may not, or a location that needs to be changed.
That's right, and that's one of the first places that we will post things. So it's always good if you are planning to come to a 4-H ag or animal event that you just double check with our Facebook page to make sure nothing has changed. That's also the place that we would post any updated requirements for event specific information, things like that. So it's just a really good way for us to be connecting with 4-Hers. That's also the place that we'll put results and links to results for any of our contests or events that we've had in the upcoming fall.
And that's important because people want to know how things turned out. Family and friends want to know as well. So a nice place for them to connect as well.
That's right. And we're trying really hard to keep up to date. We've done some really exciting events and videos that announce our winners. We try to post pictures of youth that have participated in any of our live events. And we also like to share any of their exciting project learning experiences.
And project learning is part of this as well?
Yes, it is. We're really excited about an equine e-learning series that we have started. Our first video was posted just in time for the Kansas State Fair and helped youth with clipping hints. We're really excited about a partnership with K-State Horse Teaching and Research Unit and Dr. Sterling Buse. She is a great resource for us, and we have recorded some videos that we're working on that will be posted throughout the year. So we want to make sure that everyone checks those out as well.
Equine is wrapping up, and if I remember correctly, all of the state fair things have been done as well.
Yes, everything is wrapped up. You can go to our Facebook page for results from those shows. You also can find a link that will take you to results for poultry, for dairy, and any other animal or livestock that happened during our extended state fair time. That's also the place that you can look for results from our static as well.
We should probably talk a little bit about the effort that went into getting the state fair on this year because so much was canceled, but a lot of the animal sciences areas were able to finish up their projects.
Yes, we're really excited for the work that our horse action team put into creating our state fair livestock show for equine. It was a great experience, and the time that the volunteers put into that show is really amazing, and I just want to give a big shout out to all the work that they've done.
And really a shout out to the 4-H members as well because they had to make some adjustments as well and keep things safe for everyone.
Yes, it has been a great experience for all of us to just learn to sit back, take a minute, think about what the risks are, what the benefits are, and make some determination on what our project learning experience will look like. A lot of the 4-Hers were able to exhibit their project areas in virtual ways. They were able to do it live. The agents within the local units just did an awesome job of really assessing what the risks were for their 4-Hers and coming up with a plan that gave everybody the best experience and kept everyone safe. So a shout out to all of those at the local units for all the amazing work they did this summer as we wrap up our show season for 2020. Let's hope that next year looks nothing like this, but thanks to everyone for all their hard work.
Well, what are some of the things that are coming up? What type of plans are you making for the next season?
So we're really excited. We've noticed that a lot of things are being canceled in live events at the national level, and so we're really looking at how we can offer experiences to our 4-Hers virtually, modified live, things like that. One of the things in the equine area that we're working on is Horse Panorama. That's usually held in January. We just want to make sure that all those teams that normally start practicing for all those contests continue to practice because those experiences will be available even if they're not live. They will be a virtual experience, much like we did with Livestock Sweepstakes this year. So just keep practicing and get ready for an amazing 2020-2021 season.
And again, that's where the Facebook page comes in, the e-learning series, all of that a way to stay connected.
That's right. We want to just make sure we stay connected and stay up to date on everything that changes and keep giving these opportunities to our youth.
There are a lot of opportunities within this project area. If people want to find out more about the area, how can they do that?
They can always just go to our Kansas 4-H Facebook page, and that will give information to our website and general 4-H information. They can check us out also on our website for Kansas 4-H, and there's always a link. And then always there's our local units. Make sure you can just search for whatever county that you reside in and extension office, and that will take you to their website, and you can connect with those local agents.
And again, finding the Facebook page, how easy is that?
It's super easy. You just type in Kansas 4-H Agriculture and Animal Sciences, and it will take you right to our Facebook page.
And go ahead and like the page, join in, and I guess also extend that to some of your friends and family so that they can also keep up to date on what's going on.
That's right. That would be the great way to share all the news.
That's Kansas 4-H Extension Specialist Anissa Jepsen. For more information on agriculture and animal science, visit kansas4h.org or contact your local county or district extension office. And again, the easiest way to find and follow the Facebook page is by searching for Kansas 4-H Agriculture and Animal Science Facebook page. And that'll do it for this edition of Agriculture Today. For Eric Atkinson, I'm Jeff Wickman. This is the K-State Radio Network.